Hi, this is Derek with MostInterestingLife.com. I'm here making another one of my videos right before the gym. And you can see I have my color therapy glasses on. I have the magenta on today. And I have good news. I finally wrote the article about them. The article will be released next week on my blog, MostInterestingLife.com. Probably a few weeks later, I'll make a follow-up YouTube video about it. So in about a week, you could finally read why I'm wearing these crazy glasses. But the title of today's video, or the topic, is Interesting People Don't Take the Easiest Path. Now, in today's world, people are always looking to do whatever is easiest. And the interesting path is usually not the easiest path. It's the most rewarding in the long run, but in the short run, it's certainly not easy. One big reason for this is a lot of interesting things are new. And whenever you're doing something new, your brain just can't be on autopilot. You can't just be sitting there going through the motions. You're not wired for it mentally. You don't have muscle memory for doing new interesting things. Putting new interesting ideas in your head, you actually have to think about them. Whereas if you're doing just the same old stuff every single day, that's easy. But it's usually less interesting. Now, you see this all around us. One example is fast food. People love fast food in this country. Not everyone, but McDonald's, Burger King, any sort of fast food does very, very well because people know what they're getting, so it's easy to make a decision. They could drive through. It's cheap. It's fast. It's too easy. Whereas more interesting people realize that food is fuel. Food actually builds your body. The stuff you're eating becomes a part of you. So they look to eat healthier. But eating healthier is more difficult. It's not the easy path. You can't just go get food at any which place. Especially if you want to eat organic foods, food without hormones and pesticides. If you want to eat fresher foods with healthy vegetables and lean, healthy proteins. It's not easy to do. So it's certainly not the easy path, but it's the more rewarding and interesting path in the long run. And also, people aren't very adventurous with their food either. Whenever I travel around, I love to eat all sorts of crazy foods. I've gone to Thailand and I've eaten crickets and mealworms. I've gone to China to the night market in Beijing. And I was eating starfish, I was eating scorpions, I was eating silkworms. Hey, I'll try anything once or twice just to see how it is. When I went to Peru, I was eating guinea pigs, I was eating alpaca meat, and a lot of people get grossed out about stuff like this. They say, oh, how can you eat that? They think, you get sick? No, I didn't get sick. People have been eating this stuff for hundreds, thousands of years, probably even a lot more than that. And they're doing very well. It's actually grosser. The stuff that people eat, the fast food, the processed foods, in reality, that's a lot more gross than eating a guinea pig or eating an insect. I mean, the guinea pig or insect, they're probably eating organic foods. There's not having pesticides. This isn't a video about the food industry, but all the shortcuts that they take, the inhumane, unsanitary conditions that these animals are growing up in, it's ridiculous. It's terrible. So if you really look and learn, that food, the boring, easy food, is actually a lot more disgusting than the healthy or interesting foods, stuff that you have to work for. So another example is TV. TV is the easiest path to entertainment possible. You can sit in a chair, you have a remote control in your hand, you have access to pretty much unlimited amounts of entertainment. It's just too easy. You don't have to do anything. Now, don't get me wrong. I like television. There are certain shows I like to watch. I'm very thankful that television exists and just the amount of artwork and production value that goes into these things, the stories that are told. It is impressive, but in the right dose and in a small dose. Because if you're watching TV, you can't add to your life in so many other ways. Now, I've seen a lot of people that they say, I'm learning something from this television. You're probably not. You would learn more reading a book than you would watching whatever show. They might say, I'm learning detective work from watching CSI and science. Read a science book, go to a science blog, look at real research. Same thing with business. That's the best way to do it. People use things. People come up with excuses way too easily to live a boring life. Exercise is another huge one. People hate to exercise. It's in the beginning of the year when I'm making this video. There's still a lot of New Year's resolution people, but they won't last too long because they'll get tired from every day. They're tired from work, and eventually they'll quit. But exercise in the long run leads to a much more interesting life, full of energy, full of a body that's capable of doing a lot of interesting things. Another example where people take an interesting path is with their job, with their profession. They like a job where they could just sit, do the same thing every day, collect a paycheck. A job is not always the worst thing. If you're growing through the job, if it's stimulating, if you're doing really interesting work, if you're doing some sort of scientific research, some law enforcement type jobs could be interesting if you're really engaged, some medical jobs. But at the same time, there are people in all those types of positions that are looking just to go day in, day out. And for me, the most grueling type of work is the most boring work. When you're stimulated and engaged with your work, you might be doing a lot of work, but the day just flies by and you'll feel energized after. Why? Because you're interested in it, because you find the work interesting, because you're curious about it, and you're looking to find little ways to do it better, and you're engaged with it. But most people are just trudging through their work. They wake up, they have their commute. It's just a very boring, but what they see is easy path to take with it. Another one that I find that's always a great example of just how lazy people are is if you see an elevator or an escalator and a staircase. Now, if you're going up some huge building, I understand taking the elevator, but a lot of times people are going up one floor or half a floor even, and they will line up and wait 5, 10, 20 minutes just to go in the elevator to avoid some stairs. Just recently, when I was coming back from Houston, I was landing. I came back in Newark Airport, and I saw a line of people after I had my luggage, and I said, oh darn, I'm gonna have to wait for some reason. And I go and I get to the line, and I look and I notice the line is for the elevator, and there's a staircase right next to it that's not being used by anybody. Now granted, there were a decent amount of stairs, and some people have a crazy amount of luggage, but a lot of people just had a backpack, a small suitcase, and they were avoiding the stairs. I was the only person that went and took the staircase. I was excited to take the staircase. During my trip, I didn't go to the gym. I was doing calisthenics, I was doing push-ups, I was doing stuff like that, but I was doing less exercise than normal, so I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity to get a little exercise in, not have to wait with all these people that are just do anything not to take a staircase. And so I went up the stairs. It took me 10, 15 seconds, and I was up, while all the other people were just sitting there. A lot of them, after many hours of travel, just sitting in another line, waiting some more. And this was to get to an air train to catch other trains. So I bet a lot of them missed whatever train they wanted to and just made their day that much longer. Whereas I got that quick, I got some exercise, I was happy. But this just shows people love the easy path. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably want more for your life. You want a more interesting life. And that's why be willing to take a staircase. It's just the whole mentality of everything. Another thing is vacations. Now, in the United States, the average person doesn't even have a passport. Why? Because international travel they see it as not being easy. They see it as being extremely expensive. They see it as being more difficult. Even getting a passport, they're too lazy to do something like that. A simple application process. Most people in the United States, where they go to vacation, they go to places like Florida, or they might take a cruise to a place like the Bahamas. If they think that there's some wild people, they'll go to Las Vegas. I've been to Las Vegas. It's nice. I'm glad I went once, or I've been there twice. But there are many more wild, exciting, interesting places in the world to go to than Las Vegas. You could go to Central America for the same amount of money, flight-wise, as it costs to go to Las Vegas or to go to California. And the hotels are cheap. Everything's cheaper once you're down there. So I'm always amazed. Why do people like cruise ships so much? Because it's easy. You sit there, you know where all the food is, you know where all the drinks are, day in, day out, you know where your cabin is. You're there with safe people that are just surrounding the same people, the same sanitary American conditions. You don't have to intermingle with the local people too much. They do it because it's easy. I've been on a cruise before, and I liked it. It was decent. I went to one to Bermuda once, and I took one down the Nile River. Obviously, the Nile River one was an interesting one. But as far as my perfect way to travel, if I'm traveling, I want to interact with the local people and the local culture. I don't want to have to be back on a cruise ship at a certain time. I want to be able to appreciate the nightlife and eat at the local places, and I really want to immerse myself in an interesting way. But people get vacations, and it's just, for me, that's a waste of a vacation. A vacation should be, in my opinion, obviously something nice and interesting that leads to growth. And why do people take the easy path? The most common reason I've heard is they're tired. Tired after a long day of work. Tired after taking care of kids or doing whatever. Everybody's tired. Everybody is tired. Why aren't you going out tonight, a Saturday night, Friday night? Why aren't you taking an extra class or growing in a certain way? Because I'm tired. Yeah, I understand. There are times in life you will be tired. There are times in life you will legitimately be physically exhausted, but this becomes people's whole lives. Their whole lives are just being tired. You constantly ask them how they are. I'm tired. Yeah, maybe when you're 90 years old you'd be tired, but if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, there are even 80, 90-year-olds that are running around full of energy, that have more energy than teenagers. Tired is not an excuse. Figure out why you're tired. Maybe you have a food allergy you don't know about. Maybe you have some sort of gluten sensitivity. Maybe dairy doesn't interact with you well. Experiment and find out what types of foods are good for you. Are you breathing properly? Are you exercising? Are you getting enough sleep or even quality sleep? Maybe you can't get more sleep, but you could figure out ways to get more quiet sleep or more quality sleep. Like cut lights out of your room, have less electronics in there, sleep in a cold and sleep temperature. These are all things that could improve your sleep quality and give you more energy. I talk on the blog and a lot of these videos about different ways to have more energy. That, again, this is not what this video is about, because you could go on for days about ways to increase your energy. But the point is, tired is not an excuse to take the easy path and lead a more boring life. You'll get more sleep when you're dead. That's how it is. You're here to live life. Find ways to have more energy. Energy is a choice a lot of times too. Choosing to have energy is a great way to have more energy. People accept laziness and they accept tiredness too easy. Often when you're passionate about something, focused and engaged, you will have the energy. You make the energy. You'll find the energy is there when you need it. People that are just looking with a lazy mindset, they never have energy. They're sitting there, they're doing the least amount of work, exercise, whatever. They're usually the most tired. If I'm on a vacation, I'm doing exciting, interesting things. If I'm learning some new thing that I'm passionate about, I need a lot less sleep. I just wake up full of energy, excited for life. So being tired is not a good excuse. It's just that. It's an excuse rather than focusing on what you need to do. There's another saying. It goes something like, you bleed while in training so you don't have to bleed in battle. Now, a lot of the things that are not the easy path, things like going to the gym, things like if you have a job working to get different certifications, stimulating your mind, they are less easy in the short run, but in the long run, they'll make your life easier, and especially when it matters. If you're in good shape, if you learn martial arts, if you take the hard road of training, when it matters, if you or a loved one is in trouble, you'll be able to help them. You'll be able to defend yourself, to be able to defend them. You'll be able to carry somebody to safety. You'll be able to do the things that matter. The easy path is not always the easy path in the long run. Having less money in the long run is not easy. being out of shape in the long run is not easy. Not having a body that's capable because you decided to eat bad food or not go to the gym, that's difficult in the long run. And these things catch up. But by training hard today in whatever it is you're training in, whether it's business, whether it's social interaction, whether it's physical exercise, in the long run, this turns out to be the easy path. It's the more interesting path. It's the more rewarding path. So, bleed while training so you don't bleed in battle. And taking the tougher road, the more interesting road, it's a habit. It actually gets easier over time. You get used to trying new things. When you constantly take the easy path, that becomes a habit too. You become soft, you become weak. Whenever there's any sort of wrench that's thrown into the works and completely messes you up. But if you're used to taking a tougher path, like Musashi, the famous samurai of Japan, his whole life he took a tough path, but he was the most capable samurai ever. Or like the Stoics, like Seneca, you talk about in ancient Greece. You live hard so that in the end things are easy. In the end, things are easy from taking the hard path. And again, this just like everything else, like any habit, it becomes easier the more you do it, and life is more rewarding that way. It leads to more growth. Life is about growth. If you're not growing, you're dying. I always say that on this channel. I always say it in my articles. If you're not growing, you're dying. So taking a tougher path always leads to more growth. That's why I always like to read books that stretch my mind, whether it's about business, science, psychology. You should always be doing this. People who don't stimulate their mind their whole life are much more likely to get Alzheimer's when they're older. There have been studies where they're finding now that people with a lot of these, they have these plaques in their brains that build up over time. And this is highly linked to different types of dementia and Alzheimer's. But they found that people who are mentally engaged their whole life, they may even have these plaques in their brain, but they have much, much less symptoms of Alzheimer's or dementia, if any at all. And why? Because they chose a more stimulating, interesting, and not easiest path. People who always choose the easiest path, their bodies are weak, their minds are weak, they have nothing to show for their lives. Always take the more interesting path. Now, even people might even do stuff like go to the gym, or they might do productive things, but they do it half-ass. And while anything is better than nothing, they're choosing an easier version of doing something productive. I found that I've done this in the past while going to the gym. I've realized this. And you look at your life and realize times you're doing something, but you're not fully engaged. Because what's the point of going to the gym for an hour if you're not getting maximum benefit? Or there's a great point to, while you're at the gym, working out harder and stimulating, trying different exercises. So even while you're taking a harder path, you might take the easiest of the harder paths. Avoid this. This is something to keep in mind, especially. I mean, after this video, during this video, think of all the times that you're taking the easy path when you'd be better off taking a more interesting path. And then think about the times you think you're taking the more interesting or a little tougher path, but are being lazy about it. That's a big pitfall. And most people hate reading. This is another thing. They'll do anything to avoid reading, and when they do read, they'll just be reading silly books. They'll be reading gossip magazines. They'll be reading like the Twilight books. Now, I read fiction too. I do read some fiction. I love a good James Bond novel or a Matt Helm or a Jason Bourne novel. I do read some fiction, but just a few pages before going to bed because it helps to fall asleep faster. It's fun to read something a little bit more interesting. But people look to find the easiest path with everything, including reading. It really is crazy. And a big reason why people choose the easy path is they look for short-term stimulation. This is the way our brains are wired. This is why we like sugar, because we're wired this way. Evolutionarily, we're wired to have foods that taste good, because foods that taste good in our evolutionary past were foods that gave us energy, that would help us. We could either burn that energy or we could store it as fat, which would help us survive during starvation periods. Most things that provide short-term stimulation are like that. They have evolutionary roots of why we choose them. But we are not programmed to live in a world where there is unlimited unhealthy foods. We're not programmed to live in a world with always electronics, with everything that's so easy. So our bodies and our minds for a lot of people are starting to atrophy. They're getting weaker. Because of the fact that we have access. I mean, it's a blessing. I love technology. I love the tools that are available. I love the vast amount of food. But these things give us choices, and the choices to make bad decisions and good decisions. So it's up to us to choose in the long term what will give us the most long-term, lifelong stimulation rather than just the short-term eating junk food, sitting down, watching TV. It's a choice of what we do with these amazing tools. They could either be our best friend or our worst enemy. Another thing that I find people lazy with is languages. People in the past, they used to speak a lot more languages. I mean, people that grew up in Europe, and especially if you ever met somebody from India, how many languages do you speak? Like 7 languages. 5 or 6 of which you've never even heard of in your life. Languages is another thing that it's not an easy path to learn a new language, but it's more interesting, and it certainly pays off. It's great for the brain. If you meet somebody from a culture where they speak a different language, you really connect a lot more. It's great when you're traveling. Studying languages is not the easy path, but it's certainly a more interesting path. Now, I'm not saying to take the toughest path just for the sake of taking the tougher path. I'm saying look in the long term what you want in your life. See what it takes to get there in the long term. What are the goals that you have? And realize the path that will take you there best in the long run. Do not take the short term easy path. Really, by taking an interesting, what seems the short term harder path is the long term easier path. You'll have a stronger body, a stronger mind, you'll be happier, you'll have better human interactions, better stories to tell. You're not looking to beat your head against the wall. You're not looking to beat yourself up by taking a harder path, but you're looking to take what is the best long-term path, and that's the most important part of this. So whenever you're looking to eat food, whatever decisions you make in planning your day, the actions you're taking, if you're looking to watch TV, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is it to build my long-term interesting life? Or is it just because I'm making excuses in the short term to do these things? So I know this is a longer video than normal, but this really sums up a lot of the whole interesting path. Always choosing the interesting path, which is often the tougher path, will give you a much more satisfying, interesting life. So again, if you got any value out of this video, give it a like, a thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, share it, go to my blog, mostinterestinglife.com. And until next time, stay interesting.